As you know, we have charged Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke with first-degree murder in the connection of the shooting death of Laquan McDonald. Laquan McDonald was 17 years old when he was shot and killed by the defendant on October 20th, 2014 at approximately 9:47 p.m. on the city's southwest side. I'm going to begin my remarks by summarizing the facts of the case as we proffered them in court earlier today. On Monday, October 20th, 2014, the defendant was working on duty as a uniformed police officer working with a partner in a marked patrol car assigned to the overnight shift in the Chicago Police Department's 8th District. The circumstances leading up to the shooting that evening began at 9:47 p.m. when a Chicago police dispatcher radioed to an 8th District beat car that a citizen was holding a male who had been caught breaking into trucks and stealing radios in a parking lot near 41st and Kildare. That male was later identified as Laquan McDonald. The radio dispatches were broadcast to all 8th District Patrol units. At 9:53 p.m., a responding beat car related that the guy is walking away with a knife in his hand, and the dispatcher inquired as to whether any available units had a taser. Another beat car responded immediately that they were on their way, although they did not indicate whether or not they had a taser. 1 minute later, a responding officer radioed that the suspect was walking toward a nearby Burger King restaurant located on Pulaski Road. The dispatcher confirmed the location, reminded all units that the individual was armed with a knife, and they then continued to ask if the other units were in close proximity. At 9:56 p.m., one of the responding beat car officers radioed that the suspect had just used the knife to slash the tire on their squad car. Seconds later, beat car 845R radioed that they were 2 blocks away from the incident. Beat car 845R was the responding police unit in which Officer Van Dyke was a passenger. The squad was being driven by his partner. Seconds later, 2 additional police officers responded through radio transmissions that they were on their way as well. At that point, a total of 8 officers, including this defendant and his partner, had arrived on the scene in 4 vehicles to assist the officers who had the initial contact with Laquan. None of these officers were equipped with tasers. The dash camera of one of the responding beat cars captured the shooting, but no audio was recovered. Although some of the other responding units had operating dash cams, due to their positioning, they did not capture the actual shooting, nor do they contain audio recordings. Investigators recovered video from a local business that showed Laquan walking away from the initial officers at 40th Street. Attempts to download video from another local business were unsuccessful, but it was determined that the cameras at that location would not have captured the scene of the actual shooting. Finally, video from a 3rd local business was recovered, but due to the distance and obstructions, that video was deemed to be very limited evidentiary value. The dash camera video shows Laquan McDonald as he jogs south on Pulaski Road, passing the Burger King. At the 9:57:25 p.m., timestamp is on that video, the recording shows 2 other marked Chicago police SUVs on the scene. At that time, Laquan was walking, and as he passes one of the responding police units, he waves his right arm, and a knife is visible in his right hand. 5 seconds later, Officer Van Dyke and his partner park their vehicle and immediately draw their weapons. At that time, Laquan McDonald is approximately 1 foot from the white lane divider in the middle of Pulaski Road going southbound, and his body appears to be moving slightly away from the officers toward the west side of Pulaski. At 9:57:36, McDonald has crossed over the white lane divider away from the officers, and Officer Van Dyke has taken at least 1 step toward McDonald with his weapon drawn. The officer then opened fire on Laquan, whose arm jerks, his body spins around, and he falls to the ground. While Laquan is falling to the ground, the defendant takes at least one more step towards him, at which point the angle of the dash camera changes and we can no longer see the officer within the frame of the video. 2 seconds later, Laquan McDonald is lying in the street on his right side, and the video captures what appears to be 2 puffs of smoke coming from the ground near his body. These puffs of smoke were later identified as clouds of debris caused by the fired bullets. At 9:57:51, McDonald is still lying on the street, and the last visible shot is fired. In the 13 seconds that he has been on the ground, his body has jerked and his arms have moved slightly. There have been 3 visible clouds of debris indicating shots hitting the pavement near Laquan McDonald's body. At 9:57:54, Officer Van Dyke's partner approaches McDonald and kicks the knife out of his hand. The knife, later recovered by police, had a 3-inch blade that folded into the handle. Officer Van Dyke's partner reported that there was a brief pause in the shots when he looked at Van Dyke and saw that he was preparing to reload his weapon. Officer Van Dyke's partner related that he could hear McDonald struggling to breathe, and he told Van Dyke to hold his fire so he could approach McDonald and kick the knife away. Officer Van Dyke was armed with a 9mm caliber semi-automatic pistol and had a 16-round capacity. Chicago police investigators later recovered 16 fired cartridge cases from the scene, and the Illinois State Police determined that all those cartridge cases had been fired from Officer Van Dyke's weapon. Our investigation has determined that Officer Van Dyke was on the scene for less than 30 seconds before he started shooting. In addition to the fact that all evidence indicates that he began shooting approximately 6 seconds after getting out of his vehicle. An analysis of the video establishes that 14 to 15 seconds passed from the time the defendant fired his first shot to clear visual evidence of a final shot. For approximately 13 of those seconds, Laquan was lying on the ground. On the right, of the 8 or more officers on the scene, it was only the defendant who fired his weapon. Laquan had a pulse at the time Chicago Fire Department paramedics arrived at the scene, but lost his pulse during transportation to Mount Sinai Hospital. Once at the hospital, life-saving efforts were unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead. According to the interviews with officers on the scene, Laquan McDonald never spoke to the officers, never responded to their numerous verbal commands to drop the knife. The first responding officers stated that they did not see the need to use force against McDonald when they encountered him, and that he began running away towards Pulaski when sirens could be heard. Several civilians also witnessed the shooting. One was a motorist stopped in traffic on Pulaski when he saw McDonald walking in the street immediately before he was shot. The motorist described McDonald as looking for a way to get away from the police. The motorist stated that McDonald never moved toward, lunged at, or did anything threatening towards the officers before he was shot and fell to the ground. It's extremely complicated when you investigate police shootings. So with that being said, this investigation was tenacious. It was meticulous. We did everything to make sure that we were not going to jeopardize our case, because if we do, and we use tainted evidence obtained against the Garrity ruling, our indictment will be dismissed. So we want to make sure that we are following all the rules and making sure that everything is done. And so that's why this investigation and all police investigations take a significant amount of time. The bottom line is these cases, unlike most cases, require a meticulous examination that could seem to the passive observer to be taking too long. However, the unique and complex nature of these issues means that these cases are time-consuming, requiring a massive and labor-intensive effort. It is not at all unusual for these types of investigations to take up to 20 months before reaching a charging decision. In this case in particular, many people from the FBI, the United States Attorney's Office, and my office have been working tirelessly to reach a just conclusion. At the end of the day, I'd rather take my time and get it right than rush to judgment and get it wrong. Rushing to judgment simply has no place in a professional investigation of this magnitude and could only serve to jeopardize justice being done. Throughout the course of this investigation, it was our intention to announce our charging decisions and our conclusions jointly and simultaneously with the United States Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office, and myself. That was our goal, to stand up here together jointly announcing our respective decisions. In order to do it, we wanted to speak with one united voice with everyone who was involved in this very, very thorough investigation. However, I made the decision after that plan that the Cook County Judge Valderrama ruled last week that the videotape would be released to the public as a result of the civil litigation with the City of Chicago. While we would have preferred for the investigation to have run its full course and enabled our federal partners to complete their evaluation in its entirety, I felt compelled, in the interest of public safety, to announce these state charges today. Maintaining public safety is my #1 job, and I do not want the public to view this video without knowing this very important context that with these charges, we are bringing a full measure of justice that this demands. To be clear, the judge's order that the City of Chicago must release the video by November 25th certainly moved up the timing of our announcement, but it did not in any way dictate our decision to charge this defendant with first-degree murder. I made that decision internally weeks ago. As you know, the citizens of Chicago will soon have the opportunity to view the video for themselves. Throughout the course of our investigation, I've seen the video on a number of occasions, and I can tell you, it is everything that has been described to be by the news accounts. It is graphic, it is violent, it is chilling. I've been a prosecutor for nearly 30 years. I have personally investigated and prosecuted numerous cases of police misconduct and public corruption. I've been involved in hundreds of murder investigations and trials, and I've seen some of the most violent and graphic evidence and crime scene photos that you can only imagine. To watch a 17-year-old young man die in such a violent manner is deeply disturbing, and I have absolutely no doubt that this video will tear at the hearts of all Chicagoans. I know that Laquan's mother and some family members have been opposed to the release of this video, and I certainly understand their concerns and their anguish. As a mother, I cannot imagine the personal pain that Laquan's mother and his family have dealt with and will continue to deal with when the video is made public. I hope that the citizens will take this into consideration and show respect and restraint in their actions following the release of this video.